If your compost pile has ever smelled bad, refused to break down, or turned into a soggy mess instead of rich black soil, you are not alone. Compost failure happens even to experienced gardeners, and it is one of the most common reasons people quietly give up on composting altogether. Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to Evergreen Garden, leave a comment with your compost struggles, and share this video with another gardener who is fighting a stubborn pile. Now let's get straight into why compost fails and exactly how to fix it, step by step, using methods that actually work in real gardens. Compost fails when the carbon to nitrogen balance is wrong and no one notices early enough. The number one reason compost piles stall is an incorrect balance between carbon-rich materials and nitrogen-rich materials. Carbon materials are dry, brown and woody, such as dry leaves, straw, cardboard, sawdust and shredded paper. Nitrogen materials are fresh, green and moist, such as kitchen scraps, grass clippings, manure and green weeds. When nitrogen dominates, the pile becomes slimy and smelly because anaerobic bacteria take over. When carbon dominates, the pile stays cold and unchanged for months. The practical ratio that works for most home compost piles is roughly 3 parts brown material to 1 part green material by volume. For example, if you add 1 bucket of kitchen scraps, you should immediately cover it with 3 buckets of dry leaves or shredded cardboard. Gardeners who eyeball this ratio instead of guessing are the ones who succeed consistently. Compost stops working when moisture levels are ignored for too long. Compost microbes need water, but they also need air, and many piles fail because they are either bone dry or waterlogged. A functioning compost pile should feel like a wrung-out sponge when you squeeze a handful. If water streams out, it is too wet and, oxygen is being pushed out. If it crumbles and feels dusty, microbial activity slows to almost nothing. In dry seasons, especially in hot climates, compost piles need occasional watering, just like garden beds. Adding a light watering every time you add new materials keeps decomposition active. In rainy seasons, piles need protection with a cover or roof to prevent drowning the microbes. A simple sheet of iron or thick plastic angled to shed rain can, honestly, save months of composting time. Compost fails when air circulation is treated as optional. Oxygen is not a luxury in composting, it is essential. When air cannot move through the pile, anaerobic bacteria dominate, producing foul smells and, slowing decomposition. Turning the pile introduces oxygen and redistributes materials so that microbes can work evenly. For a hot compost pile, turning once every 7 to 10 days keeps temperatures high and break down fast. For slower composting systems, turning once a month still prevents compaction. If turning is physically difficult, structure becomes critical. Mixing coarse materials like small sticks, chopped maize stalks, or sunflower stems into the pile creates air pockets that keep oxygen flowing naturally. Compost really struggles when particle size is never considered. Large chunks of material take far longer to decompose, and many compost piles fail simply because, the inputs are just too big. Whole cabbage leaves, thick banana stems, or long grass clippings tend to mat together and block airflow. But chopping materials into smaller pieces can dramatically speed up the composting process. Now, here's a tip for you. Kitchen scraps, when cut into hand-sized pieces, decompose a lot faster. Cardboard, when torn into strips, breaks down more efficiently than whole sheets. Even garden prunings can benefit from being chopped to lengths shorter than a forearm. Gardeners who reduce particle size can actually cut composting time by more than half, and that's without adding any special products at all. Compost, it often fails quietly. when temperatures never rise and no one bothers to check. A healthy compost pile generates heat as microbes get to work, and this heat is really a sign that decomposition is happening properly. While not all compost needs to be hot, a pile that never warms up usually has an issue with balanced moisture or oxygen. If a pile stays cold for weeks, it may need more nitrogen, more water, or simply better aeration. Adding fresh grass clippings in thin layers or a small amount of manure can really help jumpstart microbial activity. Even, believe it or not, human urine diluted at a ratio of 1 part urine to 10 parts water can safely add nitrogen and revive a stalled pile, as long as it's used sparingly. Compost becomes contaminated when unsuitable materials are added. Adding too much oily food waste, meat scraps, or heavily treated wood introduces problems that slow or even stop decomposition. Excess oil coats organic matter and, blocks microbial access. Treated wood introduces chemicals that microbes really struggle to break down. Diseased plant material can reintroduce pathogens into the garden if the pile never reaches sufficient heat. Successful compost piles, they stay simple and consistent, focusing on plant-based materials, manure and household greens balanced with browns. Compost fails when patience replaces observation. Many gardeners assume compost just needs time, but time alone does not fix imbalance. Composting is an active biological process, not storage. Successful composters observe smell, temperature, texture, and moisture regularly. A sour smell signals excess nitrogen or moisture. A dusty texture signals dryness. A cold pile signals inactivity. Adjusting early prevents months of wasted effort. Composting rewards attention far more than neglect. Compost succeeds when problems are corrected instead of restarted. One of the biggest mistakes gardeners make is abandoning a failed compost pile and starting a new one without learning what went wrong. Almost every compost problem can be fixed by adjusting carbon, nitrogen, moisture, and air. If you've got too much moisture, just add some dry leaves. When things are breaking down a bit too slowly, adding more greens will help. If you notice any unpleasant smells, simply turning the pile usually sorts it out, and, if your compost seems inactive, a bit of water often does the trick. Compost is forgiving when corrected early and, honestly, ruthless when ignored. Composting doesn't fail because gardeners are lazy or inexperienced. It fails because, quite often, the biology is misunderstood or underestimated. Once you respect the microbes and give them the right balance, compost becomes predictable, fast, and really incredibly rewarding. If this guide helped you understand why your compost struggles, subscribe to Evergreen Garden for serious, practical gardening knowledge. Share this video with your gardening group and comment below with the compost problem you are fixing next.